Welcome to the Varsity Voices Media Network, where we put the spotlight on high school sports and the Chicago Catholic League football. I'm Joe Frevaletti, and here with me is my co-host, Dan Frevaletti, and today we're kicking off our season preview in a different way. Instead of just running through each division, team by team, we're diving into the big questions and storylines that will define this year in the Chicago Catholic League. From new head coaches trying to make their mark to teams with the most to prove, bold non-conference schedules, and even those who might shock us for better or for worse. We'll talk division favorites, potential undefeated runs, national recognition, and of course, who might be our very first Zuko's Dog of the Week winner. If you love Chicago Catholic League football, this is the conversation that sets the stage for the season ahead. ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, is a devastating illness that weakens the muscles we use to move, swallow, and breathe. Over time, it becomes fatal. On average, people live just 2 to 5 years after diagnosis. There's no cure yet, but thanks to research and clinical trials at the Les Turner ALS Center at Northwestern Medicine, we're getting closer every day. This fight is personal for me and Dan. Our brother-in-law passed away from ALS a couple of years ago. That's why I want to invite you to join the ALS Walk for Life on Saturday, September 20th at Soldier Field, hosted by Chicago's Les Turner ALS Foundation. Funds raised support their mission to provide comprehensive care for people living with ALS, their families, and to advance life-changing research. Come be part of the movement. There'll be food trucks, live entertainment, and fun for the whole family. Together, we can honor loved ones, support those battling ALS today, and bring hope for a cure tomorrow. Learn more or register now at alswalkforlife.org. I don't know if you were outside today, but I was off and on, and there was kind of crisp coolness in the air. Did you notice that?
Oh, yes.
What did it make you think of?
I told my wife as we were driving somewhere, we had the windows down, and I said, "You know what? It feels like football.
It feels like
feels
football,
like football."
right?
I said, "I don't know if it's the time of year, if it's the weather change, if it's all of it, but it really is starting to feel like football, and we're there, Joe. We are there. It's exciting."
If you are looking to buy or sell a home, contact RE/MAX Realtor and Circle of Legends recipient Christopher Cobb. Let Chris's extensive negotiating experience work to guide you on all of your real estate buying and selling needs. Contact Christopher now to discuss the right strategy for your personalized real estate buying and selling plan. His number is 630-420-0070, or you can visit his website at christophercobb.com.
So I was outside and the weather was cool, crisp. A couple of leaves actually fell in my backyard. And I was like, oh, it is football time for sure. And I thought maybe it's a little early. I'm sure you can remember first games of the year, whether it's high school or college, where it's 95 degrees, right?
I'm looking at the weather too, thinking about Friday night. It looks like it's going to be perfect.
It's going to be beautiful. Yeah. It is. And there's going to be some really good games, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we want to talk about the Chicago Catholic League and some of the great games that there's going to be, as well as a preview into what we're kind of looking at for this year. A little bit different. We're not just going to go through each of the divisions, Dan, and say this team, that team. Here's who we think is going to do well. Here's who we think is going to maybe not do quite as well as maybe you might expect. We're going to look at it from a kind of a different perspective, some different topics. They all relate back to the season, of course, but I think it'll be a little bit more interesting. What about you?
Yeah, that's the hope. There's plenty of publications that do a great job of kind of going team by team, who's back and who's has to be replaced, and some of those things. I think looking at it from a big picture standpoint of some of the questions that are out there about the teams and the conference, I like it. It's worth a shot, Joe.
It's worth a shot. So let's jump in, Dan, and let's jump in kind of high level, a little bit high level at first. All right. I'm thinking about what might be some of the most interesting storylines in the Chicago Catholic League this year. And I think there's a couple out there, right? Let me start, and I'll
Okay.
give you one. So
All right.
the one that comes up right away is there's a fair amount of new head coaches this year. We've got Robbie Gold at St. Viator. We've got Zibikowski at St. Pat's. We've got DeFranza at Notre Dame. We've got a new coach at Leo. That's Theo Hopkins. We
Right.
also have a new coach at St. Lawrence. That is Pat Swanson. Did I
Yes.
miss any?
I think that's the list I have.
Okay. Yeah, that's the
So,
list
yeah.
I have too.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, who do you think is going to, if you look at it from a very kind of basic standpoint, who do you think is going to have the most success as far as some of those new coaches are concerned?
Wow. You know, Joe, this might be telling for me for the rest of the episode. So when I give this answer, but
Okay.
I think who's going to have the most success. I'm thinking it's Tom Zibikowski at St. Pat's.
Okay. Why do you?
Now we haven't talked to him.
That? Yeah, we have not talked to him. Yeah.
Yeah. So we only can really go by last year, but I think anyone who's listened to us for the year plus that we've been on knows that as we went through the season, we kind of felt like St. Pat's, and I think it started in the Bennett game where they were just grinding out chunks behind a really big offensive line, and their running game was coming around. And I thought, if I were to be there, I would lean into that. And I think Coach Zibikowski's got a reputation as a physical player and a guy who, is I think he's going to be kind of no nonsense. But again, that's just guessing. But I think all those guys are back. That big front line is all back.
Right.
And they were huge. And I think they have the potential to lean into that and push some teams around this year and do it in a way that gets them to a winning record. So I think the favorite would probably to have the best season would be because they've had good teams, deep runs, good lower levels is Pat Swanson at St. Lawrence.
Yep. That's what I was thinking too, for sure.
Yeah. But my pick is Zibikowski. Did I steal your pick, steal your thunder there with Coach Swanson?
No, you did not steal my thunder. I just thought, and you just mentioned the reasons why, just because of the success of the program, the number of players returning. I feel like St. Lawrence and Pat Swanson are maybe the best of the group as far as new coaches are concerned, and the teams as far as their success this year. But I do like what you're saying regarding St. Pat's and Zibikowski, because if people were listening to us last year, and as we talked about St. Pat's, we marveled at the at the size of their offensive line, and we felt like it took them maybe 4 or 5 games to get there, but eventually they kind of relied on that. And they did.
It's kind of what it felt like to me.
Yeah. And I feel like Zibikowski is smart enough, right, to kind of lean into that. And like you and I talked about earlier this week, I would just run behind those big boys up front, and I would take my chances with that. I wouldn't worry about anything else. I would just try and pound the ball if I were them.
Yeah. Joan, a quick look at the other coaches, the new coaches, and a little bit on them. Coach Hopkins at Leo, we did talk to him. Is he the coach to turn it around? To take some progress. You'd hate to see a program. This is their third head coach in 4 years.
Right.
You'd like to see someone, and he's an alum. So I think that's really good for Leo. It would be nice to see them continue what looked like some competitive games last year.
Yeah.
And to continue to build on it. Now, I think Susie may have had something about them being really young again. So might have to preach a little patience with Leo still. But they might, I would like to see them continue to progress and be more competitive. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that, if anything, or if, you want to add anything about another coach who maybe was on your list.
I don't know. I worry about Leo a little bit just because of their numbers. Yes, we did see some progress last year, I think, towards the end of the year. Unfortunately, I think the players that we talked about last year at Leo are all gone now. So I think he's starting from step zero again with some young guys, maybe a couple of upperclassmen. So I think they're going to have another tough year. I don't think anybody will be surprised at that. But the one that I'm really interested to see, Dan, is Coach Gold at St. Viator. I think you would agree with me on this, that they slightly underperformed last year, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, they started 4-0.
Right.
So yeah, they did not. They ended on a skid, and they had some high end talent, and so was a change necessary? It's high school football, so there's stuff that goes into it, and so there's maybe it shouldn't be like that, but these are, we talk about this conference, and there's great coaches and great coaching staffs, and high end talent should lead to victories and playoff runs, et cetera, et cetera. And so they've got a ton of key losses to graduation.
Yeah.
Right. And they ended on a losing streak. So for them to make a run in the purple division, that would be considered a surprise. But Robbie Gould's done this before.
Right.
He's done it at Rolling Meadows, where they hadn't been in the playoffs, and he has shown he can turn around a program. So it is a super interesting follow to see how they will do this year within the division and the conference.
Yeah, I think so too. I think from a standpoint of Viator, it's definitely going to be a rebuilding year, and it's going to take a while for Coach Gold to put things into place that maybe he wants in place, get some players in place as well. So I think it's going to be a tough year for them. But I don't know. He took on, like you said, a program at Rolling Meadows that had not been all that successful, and he kind of turned them around in a year or two. So we'll see what he can do with Viator. All right, so who do you think is the most approved this year, Dan, as far as teams are concerned in the Chicago?
Teams are concerned. I think you start with the non-playoff contenders from last year that were CCL'd. While I've never have said, though, they're bad teams, I think the ones that I'm going to highlight are all probably win a game at least in the playoffs. So IC, Providence, Carmel, St. Ignatius, St. Viator. I think those are the five I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any to add to that, but no. Those are kind of the easy ones to pick and say, okay, it's time to come up, and they all these teams have had really good talent. And like I said, enough to make runs in the playoffs. I think IC has to be more consistent.
Right.
We saw that last year. They really felt like they were up and down. I think Providence, I think within the high school football, community, I think people have looked at Providence as with these two classes, their varsity classes, and I'm just going senior and junior. I think they were it was known that these are really, really good classes.
Yeah.
I know they've had some losses. The quarterback's gone, transferred to Glendale West, but they've got people behind him and ready to step in that I know they feel comfortable with. But it's time to prove it on the field, and rather than just be good on paper, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dan. All those teams you mentioned, I think, have something to prove this year. IC, who everybody knows has really good talent. It's time for them to put something together this year and make a bit of a run, in my opinion. They've got some good returning players, and they lost their quarterback, but it's time for them to make a bit of a run here. And I feel the same way about Providence and Carmel.
Carmel for sure.
I mean, Carmel Catholic, when you think about who they have there and the talent that they have there, if they don't make the playoffs again this year, that's a problem.
Well, when you've got, football has become quarterback driven, right?
Yes.
And that's through on all levels. And when you've got one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the state, that's there, that's a team that probably needs to be in the playoffs.
Right.
to be considered a success.
Yeah, and we talked to
so,
Trey Taylor, right? We interviewed
oh
him,
yeah,
and
he's ready.
and he's ready,
He's
and
ready. He's in full competitor mode.
full competitor mode, and he's got. I mean, he rattled off some names. It sounds to me like they've got some real weapons on the offensive side, whether at wide receiver and running back, and including Trey Taylor at quarterback. So I will be surprised if they don't have a really good season this year. They are one of the teams that I have that has the most improved this year too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about St. Viator a little bit already. Do you have anyone else on your list, Joe, that falls under that teams to prove?
Teams to prove. Other than IC and Carmel, those were kind of the two. The only other one I had was St. Ignatius. Right?
Yeah.
I really felt like they were going to have a better year last year. They moved up. They got bumped up to the blue division. They're playing up as far as class size, that kind of thing. And I know that's difficult, but you're dealt the cards that you're dealt, and you've got to deal with it, unfortunately. And they made a name for themselves the previous years as far as being competitive and being able to compete with some of the big boys in the Chicago Catholic League and other teams. So I think this is a prove-it year for them, too, as well. Unfortunately, I think they've lost some really good players, and I think it's going to be tough for them.
Well, one thing that they've had that's kind of counter to what we've seen in some of the schools, it's kind of city versus suburb, is they've got great numbers.
Yeah.
And so you've got to think that there's some talent coming back, and there's another Wanzung, so I know he's not playing quarterback. At least I don't think so. I think
he's not.
Wideout.
Yeah.
DB wideout. Yeah.
Right.
And so they have some names that will be recognizable. I put my alumni hat too, Joe, on and threw Bennett into this mix. They had a signature win last year against DePaul Prep, right? So people think DePaul Prep, when they talk about them, that they kind of ran the table and stomped their way to the 4A championship, but they were a 7A school. That's all that people could talk about, right?
Right.
But Bennett won the conference last year, or won the division. And that was a big win. But I think Bennett would like to go back to the days where they would regularly beat and compete with teams from the old ESCC, like Marist, Joliet Catholic, Nazareth, and I think they need another signature win this year as an underdog.
You're talking about
DePaul Prep
Ignatius?
DePaul Prep may be that team.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm talking about Bennett.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
DePaul Prep might be that team again that they beat, but I feel like that they kind of beat the teams they were supposed to. They lost the teams that they didn't. They didn't fare well against. They didn't look good against some of the bigger teams out there. I think they'd like to, have a better showing for that. So I think that they would like to. And again, this is with my alumni hat squarely on and my helmet screwed in. So So that was the other team I put in there for teams with something to prove.
Okay. All right. Good. Well, we've got several out there that we're going to be watching very closely this year, and I'll be interested to see how the season unfolds. I think the first week is going to be very telling. But talking about the first week, what teams do you think, Dan, have been the most bold with their non-conference schedule?
Good question. We talked about scheduling. I felt a lot in year one as far as the thoughts behind the scheduling. Do you schedule two games where you're going to be the prohibitive favorite, or do you go big or go home? And I think that has still kind of maintained this year. I think that there's a lot of teams that feel like, hey, if we've got to get to 5 wins to get in, we know what the Catholic League brings.
Right.
We've got to get 2 wins. We've got to be 2-0 going into our crossover games and that. So, but these teams to me, Joe, stepped up. I've got a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Wow.
St. Rita.
All right. Okay.
St. Rita, Marist, Joliet Catholic,
right.
Loyola,
okay,
DePaul Prep,
and
Providence.
All right. And why?
Well, with Rita and Marist, it's easy. They play each other, right?
Right.
In week 1, and Rita then has Mount Carmel week 2. Marist went all Catholic League as well. They went with St. Rita, obviously, and then Brother Rice. Joliet Catholic said, we're going to kind of test ourselves against some of the bigger public schools in the area. They went all West Suburban Gold, I think that conference is, starting with LT,
Right.
and then and Glenbard West. And I love the game with Glenbard West. It's two similar teams. The game might be over in an hour
Yeah.
because they're both kind of smash mouth football teams, at least traditionally. And Glenbard West is looking to rebound after an off year, and JCA, they could have been in our teams with something to prove, even though they were semifinalists because they lost so many players.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I put Joliet Catholic in this list. Loyola plays Maryville, Indiana, week 1. They were a state. I don't know how Indiana does their state final games.
I felt like they were like a quarter finalist or something. I couldn't quite tell.
Yeah, it was weird. They called them a state semifinalist, and then St. Francis, they're coming out to the western suburbs, to play St. Francis week 2, playing on the blue turf,
right,
in a game that they lost last year. So that's good. And then DePaul Prep, Joe, we can't leave them out because that's week 2 is DePaul Prep versus St. Ignatius after week 1 at Fenwick, or playing Fenwick. That I'm calling that the Varsity Voices Bowl because I believe we made that one happen.
I like that. We will market that, Dan.
Yeah, the Varsity Voices Bowl.
Bowl.
Yeah, and then looking at finally Providence, open with Wheaton Academy week 1, Lincoln Way Central week 2, 2 playoff teams, and 2 teams that feel to me, Joe, like they are one of those teams on the rise. That's we had that phrase for teams like DePaul Prep last year.
Right.
Those 2 schools, Wheaton Academy and Lincoln Way Central, both feel like they are teams on the rise.
Okay. Well, I went with primarily the easy choice for me. I thought about this was Mount Carmel is going out to Cincinnati to play Moeller. But
yep.
It's an easy choice. That's a good game, and it's going to be a really good game.
It is absolutely bold.
Can't wait to see it. Can't wait to listen to it. It is bold. But I agree with you about Rita and DePaul Prep. I mean, they went ahead and scheduled Chicago Catholic League teams in the first 2 games. I mean, Rita scheduled Marist and then Mount Carmel. I mean, and we know what a grinder this regular schedule is. To schedule those teams in your first 2 weeks before your regular conference schedule starts, I thought that is crazy, but I don't know. Maybe it's something that they want to do. They want to test themselves right away, right up front. But in my mind, I keep thinking about you got to get to 5 wins and, in order to make the playoffs. And I think that is bold to do that. DePaul Prep, same thing. They've got Fenwick, and like you mentioned, they've got Ignatius, who I think DePaul Prep and Ignatius, it's a budding rivalry there, at least depending on who you talk to, right?
The Varsity Voices say it is.
Varsity Voices say it is. And so I think Rita and DePaul Prep scheduling Chicago Catholic League teams in the first 2 weeks takes some real gusto.
Gusto.
Yeah.
You had the easy answer and thought
I did.
Keep it
like,
PG-13.
Say that or not?
PG-13 here on Varsity Voices.
Yeah, I'm going to check that this episode is fine for kids. So I can't say too much. Anyway,
DePaul Prep, Joe, they have, I mean, all the talk around last year's state championship was that, this is a 7A, maybe an 8A team that they've kind of, I don't want to say luck because that wasn't it at all. They were a really good team.
Yes, they were.
The kind of the prevailing thought was that they probably shouldn't have been in that division. But like you said, you play with the rules that are written. That's how they were 2 years ago. You can't be held against them that their school is a great school that is attracting, more students now.
Right.
But they have said, not only are we willing to do whatever you say class we're going to be in, we'll show you. We're going to schedule these 2 games week 1 and week 2.
Right.
So bring it on, which is cool.
It is very cool.
And it's bold. Yeah.
And I've thought about that and, thought about that argument. People said, they should have been 7. That was just playoffs. I mean, they went through the regular season playing a grinder of a schedule and came out of that playoff eligible, they didn't care who they played after that. They wanted to get to that point, and they did well. We'll see how they do this year. And we interviewed Coach Passarella again this year, and he's got bold ambitions for that program. It's
Yeah,
not just
he's not at
no,
all.
he's not a sandbagger. It's not just Illinois and the Chicago Catholic League. I remember he mentioned we've got national ambitions. We want to be known as one of those teams in the country. That's a top-notch program. So, I think he's leaning into that, and he's like, we're going to schedule whoever we can, and we're going to play.
Good for him.
Yeah, good for him is right.
Yeah.
All right. So, who do you think, Dan, is going to surprise this year? Maybe both good and bad.
That's a really good question, Joe. So I think I've already kind of talked about my surprise team, and I think it's coming out of the purple division. St. Pat's.
Yeah.
They're my biggest surprise for the good.
On the good side. All right.
On the good side. Yes. Yeah. I just had a feeling about them last year, and I think Coach Zibikowski's the right guy at the right time in the right program.
Yeah.
And so I think that that they have a really good chance to surprise some people. Surprise on the downside, whew, boy, that's tougher to say.
It is.
I will say something. I have been really surprised at how highly ranked Loyola is.
Mm-hmm.
They're still top 5, top 2 in some cases, right. in the state.
Considering who they lost, the talent they lost.
Yes.
And we don't know who's replacing them as of yet.
Right.
I mean, there's some names out there, but I agree with you on that.
Yeah. So I worry about Loyola as, I mean, and if they are quarterfinalists, and that's as far as they get, is that really bad? But I just think their ranking is a little ambitious with all that production on both sides of the ball that they've got to replace.
Yes. I agree with you. That was my pick on I hate to call it bad. I mean, just think about the Loyola.
They're going to be good. Yeah.
And what they've done over the last 10 years.
Right.
It's just amazing. So, like you said, if they make the quarterfinals and are not state champs, is that bad for them? But, considering the expectations for a program like Loyola, I think there might be the possibility or opportunity for them maybe not quite to reach the expectations of their previous teams. So I think they might fall into that category. The one I would like to see on the surprise good side would be IC, Dan.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I know we've seen some of the talent that's in that program, and I just feel like they've been not CCL'd like we talked about, but there's just been like these extenuating circumstances around them like last year that just kind of threw a wrench into their whole season. And I think maybe they'll have that won't be affecting them this year. And I think they've got a lot of returning really good players. I think they're going to be able to fill in with a couple of other good players. They've got to replace their quarterback, Will Brick. Yeah. And I think Nate Lang, one of our correspondents from last year was Doug Lang. His son, Nate Lang, is a quarterback. He's going to be a junior at IC. I think he's going to be somebody that's in the mix there and had a really good JV season last year. So I think IC is going to be my pick to surprise and on the good side. And for me, that would be for them getting back to the playoffs initially. Yeah. So I think
they it's funny. I think when people think of IC, and they've been a good program. They've had state runs and state championships in the last several years, but they fall into the numbers crunch.
Yeah,
they are not a big school. They don't have these tremendous numbers. I think people would be surprised at the total number of players on some of these teams. in the suburbs. So IC is one of those. So that you've always got to worry about injury with that, because they're going to happen.
Yeah.
You and with teams with 30 to 40 players on the varsity squad, they can't possibly have the depth that you would want. So if health is, that's goes into everything. Every category we have here, you could say based on health. But that's big for some of these teams. I think about IC, St. Francis, some of the teams that are out here that don't quite have the numbers that I think they'd like to have, or
Right.
you'd think they might have.
All right. So I'm not sure we had a team last year that went undefeated, Dan, within the Chicago Catholic League. Which team or teams do you think have the best chance of going undefeated this year? And wait, let me qualify this a bit.
Okay.
Do you want to answer that from a standpoint of their entire season, including call it preseason games, or just in the Chicago Catholic League?
Good qualifier. Yeah. Let's just go the regular season.
Regular season. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
It's hard enough, right?
That changes my my answer a bit. All right. Go ahead. Yeah.
All right. So I think it's funny how the most high profile, most competitive division, the blue division, in the Catholic League, has to me the most likely team to go undefeated. Mount Carmel has a talent. I think, however you look at this, and we talk about, all the stuff that happens in the off season and upcoming lower level players, they seem to have won the off season, and just looking at the number of players they have with high level Power 5 offers, they're on paper, they have an incredible amount of talent.
Yeah.
How much they miss Jack Elliott, especially early in the season, that'll be the difference. But I do think different than last year, a couple things. They've got an offensive line that allows you to line up, and if your quarterback is struggling, say, we're just going to run. We're just going to run, control the clock. Like, I think they can beat you several different ways this year. And I think their defense is going to be outstanding.
Yeah.
I think that they have got, great D-line. I mean, high-level players all across D-line. They've got some stud backers, Division I talent in the defensive backfield. So I think they have the best chance. On my list, Joe, I also had Marist. It's also a tough one and probably a stretch.
Yeah.
But I could see them winning a bunch of close games. I think they're really well coached.
Yeah.
And I think you could see them having 4 wins, by a TD or less that gets them to undefeated. My last team is Nazareth. It's funny, we haven't mentioned them, but they host Mount Carmel, they host St. Rita, they host St. Francis, and I think that's one of the better home field advantages in the league.
Yeah.
So that said, both Mount Carmel and Nazareth all 3 of those teams could lose week 1.
Right. They could.
They could all lose week 1.
Yeah. But we're not talking about week 1.
No, right.
The only team I had on my list here was Mount Carmel. When I look at the schedules of the other teams within the Chicago Catholic League, if you're talking about the regular season only, the only one I can come up with is Mount Carmel, because I think they're that much better. I think they have the talent level at Mount Carmel is just that notch or 2 higher, and they're so deep, as we know, at just about all the positions. I mean, the only question about Mount Carmel, as you mentioned, is who's going to play quarterback from them. Is it going to be, Jack Elliott's little brother? Is it going to be Dowling? I don't know. We haven't heard. I haven't seen anything about that. I don't know if you have.
Jack Elliott's brother's a freshman.
He's a freshman.
Incoming freshman.
Yes.
Wow. That would be something.
That'd be
newsworthy.
Yeah. So, but like you said, if you want to develop that kid, maybe you don't ask him to do nearly as much as his older brother did, at least at this point in his career. But you rely on that huge offensive line and your outstanding defense, and hand the ball off 2 or 3 times every series of downs, right? And
right.
Yeah, right.
It could look completely different.
Right. The only other team that pops into my head is St. Rita. I mean, I know they've got some tough games, but they're also bringing back some really good players,
Right.
who are coming back, and they've got a good offense with some good returning players, and they've got to reload a bit on defense, but they've got some good returners on defense too. So Rita was the only other team that maybe I thought could possibly get there, but I think if I had to pick one, it would be Mount Carmel.
Yeah, Joe, and all these teams on their schedule, when you look at them, they've got teams that were state finalists last year.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's like, come on, to try and pick one to go undefeated is really, really hard to do.
Yeah.
He felt like Mount Carmel was unstoppable, and we didn't know anything about the Hun, but they lost week 1.
Right.
And then they lost, to Brother Rice when Jack Elliott was out. So there's some basis in our nervousness or trepidation about picking them to go undefeated, because they're as much as they're as good as they are on paper, there's still enough unknowns that you can't be sure.
So that kind of leads into the next question here, Dan. And any teams you think in the Chicago Catholic League that will be ranked nationally this year? And I know if you look at the national rankings, they go all the way down through 100, 150, right? But I'm talking like top 25, top 30 teams within the country. Do you think there's any chance any Chicago Catholic League teams can break into that?
I think if you see the division leaders in the top 3, maybe divisions, so the blue, the green, and the orange, I think any of those people, any of those teams that come out and get a fast start, if they're on a run, you might see them. Mount Carmel, if they win week 1, they could bump up a little bit. I think I've seen them. I think Max Preps has them like 30, maybe.
I think they're 30th. Like that. Yeah.
I think they're probably better than that. They might still be a little young and without the quarterback, an established quarterback. But if you see St. Rita beat Mount Carmel, then they're likely to pop up.
Mm-hmm.
And the same with any of these teams from the orange, so if you were to see, someone go on a run in the orange, Providence or Marist or someone like that, I think that they could. I think any of the teams that make a run within those top 3, I think, probably gets you a consideration into a top 40, nationally.
All right. So what about state-wise? When you think about over the course of the season, and say we're getting to the last game or 2 of the regular season, how many of the Chicago Catholic League teams do you think will be or could be rated in the top 20, say in Illinois? And this isn't by class. A lot of the ratings just come out by, here are the best teams in the state of Illinois. How many in Chicago Catholic League do you think can break into that top 20?
I think there could be half of the top 20 be Catholic League teams.
So
10 to 12.
That's going to cause a problem. You know that, right?
Yes. Well, because the people doing the rankings, we don't do rankings like that, but those that do rankings, Susie, Edgy, all the guys at Shaw, the guys at the Daily Herald, Kevin Schmidt, those guys all do a really good job. They know what we know.
Right. That,
if Mount Carmel loses week 1 and week 2, they're still going to be a top 20 team.
Right.
For sure. If St. Rita is 1-1 coming out of the non-conference, still a top 20 team.
Yeah.
So I think that they have some leeway, and there's enough knowledge there to know that unless the team is 2-5, where it doesn't look like they're going to make the playoffs, then there's some teams that are still going to get ranked because they know what's going on inside the Catholic League.
Right.
So I think it's always going to be 10 to 12 in the top 20.
Although I'm not sure if last year it was that many. I mean, sure, it was probably 6, 8 in the top 20. When I look at the teams this year, they're all going to be really good again. but they're going to beat up on each other. And I keep looking at the turnover of the quarterbacks within the Chicago Catholic League. And as you mentioned earlier, it's a quarterback driven game these days. And a lot of these teams like Loyola and Naz, and trying to think who else. I mean, teams that were up there. St. Francis, right. They lost all those quarterbacks. Yeah. So Mount Carmel. So one of the storylines, we talked about this at the very beginning of the episode, but one of the storylines for me this year in the Chicago Catholic League is going to be see which of these quarterbacks, kind of step up for each of those teams that lost these really top-notch quarterbacks.
Yeah. I think, one of our topics, I think, is emerging trends. So,
right.
So that to me is part of that. I can hold my water until then.
All right, hold your water. But all right, what you can hold your water on is who you think the division winners are going to be.
Ooh, here we go.
In the Chicago Catholic League this year, Dan. And
all right,
why don't we start with the Green Division? So we've got in the Green Division, we've got Naz, we've got St. Rita, we've got St. Francis, and IC. All projected to be playoff teams, by the way, which I find interesting. But go ahead and tell me who's your projected winner of this division.
Can I insert something here?
Go ahead.
How unhappy I am with the change at the IHSA website and trying to find the conference. Well, because they had them listed by conference last year. Now they don't even have the whole CCL in there yet. They still show the ESCC. They've got teams that aren't in the CCL there. So anyway, that's just a little side note.
Yeah. The other side note, can I inject something here too?
Yes. Please.
The other side note, look at the teams in the Green Division. I mean, it's so hard to pick. You've got Naz, Rita, Francis, and IC, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all could win this division, I think.
Right. Last year we picked Naz.
Yeah.
Right.
I think this was the one that had 3 co-winners.
Right.
The Green Division last year.
Yeah.
So
they definitely beat up on each other.
Yes.
And it could be the same thing this year.
Could be the same. Yes.
Yeah. You could have like 4, 6, and 3 teams. My pick is St. Rita.
Okay.
So that's I think the QB wide receiver combination coming back. I got a feeling about them as a team that is poised to do something special. Not that they haven't done that over the past 2 years. They were a great team last year.
Outstanding. Yeah.
But I think that they are poised to win that division, maybe outright, and go on a bit of a run, even a longer run this year in the playoffs.
You didn't steal my thunder, but I'm going to pick the same team that you did. I just have this feeling about Rita this year that I think they've got the right kind of returning players that are players that can lead a team, lead them to maybe spots they haven't been before. I think, Rita is got everything in place to have a really good run this year. I can see where maybe each of these teams makes the playoffs this year, although I would be surprised if all 4 did. But, how do you count out Naz, St. Francis, and IC as well?
You really can't. I mean, we could be dead wrong on this because all 4 of those teams are capable of winning that division, beating each other on any given Saturday, the whole thing.
Right.
So it's you literally, would not surprise me to see co-champs again this year in that division, in several of these divisions.
Exactly. So I'm predicting Rita as well as you are. So, all right. So let's go to the purple division. Last year, Bennett won this division. What do you think about this year?
This is my surprise team. So I've talked about them a few times already. I kind of jumped on St. Pat's bandwagon, late in the year last year. I think they have been really young for 2 or 3 years. I actually think they're still kind of young, but I think they're very uh, they've got experience, in some of that youth. Their massive offensive line, I think, causes the problems for some of these teams in the purple, and so I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb. I don't know how many people will pick St. Pat's, but I'm gonna pick them. But I think again, with DePaul Prep here in this conference, they have got to be the prohibitive favorite. Bennett again, they are a team that finds a way to win, and so within that division, I think in the division, I think these teams know each other really well. So it shouldn't be a surprise. Shouldn't be surprised to see Bennett or
You can't be wishy-washy on
St. Viator. But my pick is St. Pat's.
You pick St. Pat's, right?
Yeah, I'm in
All right,
with
you're
it.
going with
Yeah,
St.
I'm
Pat's. All right,
I'm
good.
in. Yep.
Yeah, I am going with DePaul Prep. I think when we interviewed Coach Passarella, first of all, he's an outstanding coach. He's putting together an outstanding program there. Last year, they exploded onto the scene, but he had built something there. And I feel like he's built something or over the last several years, which is going to be sustainable. So even though they've lost a lot of players, I think the players they have coming back, as well as some of the young ones that are coming up, I think DePaul Prep is going to take this division, and they're going to have a hold on it for a while. So,
Well, it might just be 1 year because they might get bumped up. But anyway,
right.
yeah, they
blue, and who do they bump down?
Who would they bump up to? They would bump up if they do it like true relegation and promotion. They would jump up to the white, right?
Yeah.
But but what surprised me about DePaul Prep during our interview when Coach Passarella had said how big they're going to be,
right?
Which is a lot different.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a lot different. They were similarly sized to some of these other, I think, defensively to pretty much everyone else in that division. It sounds like they're going to be pretty big up front.
They are. And again, they will be a team that everybody's watching. I think a lot will be said about DePaul Prep in their first two games, knowing who they're playing. Fenwick and St. Ignatius, we'll probably see who they're going to be. But I'm going to pick them in this division, Dan.
Okay.
All right. So let's go to that white division. And
all right.
Division we loved last year, Dan, and talked about a lot. We've got Montini, St. Lawrence, Fenwick, and Carmel Catholic. And again, looking at the teams here, it's hard to not pick Montini, in this division, considering where they came from. But, I also look at how many players they lost off that outstanding defense. And they're going to have a good offense. We know that. They've got the top quarterback coming back in Izzy Abrams. They've got some other weapons. Not sure the defense is going to be as good as it was last year. And I'm going to go a little bit maybe outside here, and I'm going to pick Carmel Catholic to win the white division this year, Dan. I really liked our interview with Trey Taylor, the quarterback for Carmel, and he convinced me that they've got the weapons there and they are on the right track. Nobody's distracted this year, and I think they've got something budding there, and I think they're going to pull off a bit of a surprise or win this division.
Yeah, I'm going with Montini, Joe.
All right.
I think it may look a lot different than it did last year. We saw their defense kind of lead them, especially early in the season. But I think the script might be flipped, and their offense might be the driver.
Okay.
For them, I think they've got a chance to put up a whole bunch of points. When you think about Israel Abrams, Isaac Alexander, they've got
CJ Harkins at wide receiver, who I love.
Yep. And some big offensive linemen. So I think I still think Montini is a team to beat.
Okay.
in this, but we didn't mention Fenwick either. I mean, they're really good. But yeah, so another great division, and kind of the one division that cuts against the grain of what you were talking about with the quarterbacks. This division's loaded with quarterbacks.
It is, right.
All except St. Lawrence, will have returning studs, returning all conference players,
Right.
and some all state players, and so really a fun division to watch, based on quarterback alone.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch, just like it was last year. I'm itching for the season to get started, Dan.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we are in the week.
We are
of
with
the season
game
starting.
week. I think I've said that 10 times over the past 2 days to anybody who would listen. I would say, it is game week. Like, what are you talking about? I said, it's game week. Come on.
Yeah. High school and college. It's great.
Yes. All right. So that's a white division. Let's move to the blue division, Dan. And, always considered the, I don't know, do you call it the top division within the Chicago Catholic League? The premier?
It's the most recognizable.
Yeah.
Right. For sure. Because there are teams that have been nationally recognized in this division, for years.
Right.
And recognizable names, within the division for years. So whether it's coaches, players, alumni. So I would say I still think it's the premier division within the conference, and if I was going to pick, a team to go undefeated or could go undefeated as being Mount Carmel, I got to go with them to win this division.
Right. I mean,
again, paper wise, they seem to be really loaded.
They are. And I can't pick anybody else either, because I just, I picked Mount Carmel earlier to be, the possible team that would go undefeated too. So, it's hard not to pick Mount Carmel in this division, although, who knows where Loyola is going to be this year. We interviewed CJ Gray from Brother Rice. He's very confident about the Brother Rice team. St. Ignatius, I think, is the one kind of question mark for me in the blue division. I'm not sure where they're going to be this year. I know others have picked them to be projected into the playoffs this year, but in my opinion, they might be the one team in this division that might be looking in at the end of the year. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about who we think is going to win the division, and I think it's going to be Mount Carmel.
Okay.
All right. So red division, interesting division. As we know, you've got Marmion, who won the division last year, Marian Catholic, De La Salle, and Leo. I think Marmion is the class of this division. I think Coach Guerra has really been, this is his second year, right? And I think he's putting all the pieces in place that he needs to, and he's developing a good program at Marmion. It's not to say that Marian Catholic can't surprise here, but I think Marmion has got too much in place and probably a little too much talent for any of the other three, Marian Catholic, De La Salle, or Leo, to challenge. So I'm going to pick Marmion in the red division.
And they won it last year, right?
They did, yes.
Yeah. Joe, I'm going different. I'm going Marian Catholic.
Okay.
So I think they have the returning quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think they've got a lot of skill coming back. I do think they're going to be primarily more talented on the defensive side again, which kind of was the case last year, but I think they have some weapons that they will add to that for this year.
Yeah.
I believe they're the most talented team in the division, and if they can put it together, I think that's your winner in the red. We'll have to see. De La Salle could have been in a team with something to prove. You got to make it through a season, right?
Right.
That's a a goal this year for them. Not much of a goal, but a goal nonetheless. We talked about Leo, where they're at. So I think it does come down to Marian Catholic Marmion, and I'm going to give Marian the edge.
Okay. All right. So we got one more division, and that's the Orange Division, Dan. And here we have Marist, Joliet Catholic, Providence, and Notre Dame. Who do you like here?
Who do I like?
Yeah,
I like a lot of them.
I'm gonna guess.
So
yeah,
who
you're gonna pick?
I would. Mine is going to be Providence. So I'm picking Providence based on the talent level. We got to look at them a couple years ago on the field, and they were really good. And those guys are juniors this year, and I understand the class ahead of them was loaded as well. Classes behind them, I think they are a program ready to come back to be in the forefront of this of the Catholic League. I really think that they have a lot of playmakers. Last year, I didn't feel like they had quite enough. I felt like it was Gavin Hagen or kind of nothing,
right?
And so this year, I think they have some talent that's coming through that you might see that might be juniors. It would not surprise me to have some guys that are in the top of leaderboards, with some stats and a really stingy defense. And, so I'm going with Providence in a really tight one because Marist is just really good and well coached.
Yeah. And that's why I'm going with Marist. I just think when I look at this division and the teams within it, I think what might be the differentiating factor here is, where the teams are at as far as talent level and coaching and how those two things kind of meld together. And I really like the way Marist, responds to their coaching. I like their talent. Yeah, they've lost some really good players, but I think they're going to be there right at the end. I think, I'm going to pick them for this division. I hate to pick against any of these teams, because I like them all. I think they're all going to be good, and we haven't mentioned Joliet Catholic, right?
Unbelievable.
Which, and it's hard to not pick Joliet Catholic in this division, but I think this is one of those years where, they've lost a significant number of players and talent to graduation. And I think that's hard to come back from, in 1 year. I really do. I think it usually takes, a couple of years to get your feet back under you as far as something like that is concerned. So I'm going to pick Marist in the orange, Dan.
Okay. All right. Yep. They're, like we said, really well, we've been to a practice, so we see just how well run it is,
right.
And it's like, whoa, that's eye opening in and of itself. And, they're at the point, I think, Marist, where they reload, like several of these schools, I think they're one of those that reloads, but yeah, I'm giving Providence the edge this year.
Yeah. Okay, so couple more topics, Dan.
All right.
First one is any emerging trends that you think we will see this year, or a continuation of trends from previous year or previous couple years that you see continuing to grow here?
I think last year we saw a crazy amount of quarterbacks throughout the league that could take over games and put teams on their back, whether it was with their arm or with their feet, and they could win the game.
Yeah.
And I think it's taken a step back this year. There's a lot of those guys are gone.
Right.
So we saw that it was a QB driven league last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you'll see that this year. I think you're going to see, there are obviously the white division is loaded with quarterback. But I think you might see more low-scoring games too, Joe, this year.
Okay.
I think last year we saw some barn burners. I feel like the defenses are poised for a bounce-back year with a lot of that offensive firepower, gone, especially at the quarterback position, and just the pendulum might swing back to the defenses this year.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, one trend that will continue is wide receivers are going to be the name of the game. It's all about if quarterbacks can get them the ball, because the wide receivers in the conference are still awesome.
Yes. Yeah. And when I was looking at this and thinking about this, the first thing that popped into my head was really along the lines of what you just said. I think this year it's going to be a wide receiver driven division where, even though they were
Give them the ball.
they were outstanding last year too,
Yeah.
but they had some really great quarterbacks who could get them the ball. So I think, if the quarterbacks are not quite up to par as they were last year, or not quite as talented with some of the teams, I think, these coaches know how much talent they have at the wide receiver position. They're going to figure out a way to get them the ball and let them be the game breakers this year.
Yeah.
So
I think the quarterbacks could be talented.
Yeah.
Right. But experience is a lot. You think of those guys that are gone. I mean, they're 2 and 3 year starters all over the place.
Yeah.
And that's not easy, and even though they practice a lot all summer and the past 2 weeks, it's still it's not true under fire reps.
Right.
And so that's going to take a bit to get used to, and some of these receivers are capable of just running down the field and quarterback throw it as far as you can. I'll get it. So you might see some of that, but I do think that we're going to see kind of a shift back to a defensive or in a running game focus.
Yeah. And I think this league is so good across the board that, they talk about at the college level, but mostly at the pro level where, the speed of the game is different, when you're actually playing in a real game. And, I think it takes quarterbacks a little while. Maybe it's new quarterbacks, I should say. Maybe last year they played JV, right? Or they had a couple of starts, at the varsity level. I think it takes a while for them to catch up to that speed of the game, in the Chicago Catholic League. And, for some of these new quarterbacks, they might look great in practice, do great in practice, great in scrimmages, but it's going to be different.
7-on-7.
Yeah.
They can really spin it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's different once you get in the game. And I think, it might take some a whole year. It might take some 3, 4, 5 games, right, before they kind of fit into that. So
and you might see some names that you thought were surefire. Maybe they're young guys, whatever, because of social media and camp the tours on that you see, but you might see some guys who have to sit a week, and have someone else play. Or you might see a competition brewing at some of these schools,
right? Yeah, we might see a lot of changes at the quarterback position mid-season this year. We'll see. That'll be another good storyline to watch. Any other emerging trends? I mean, the only one I had, and we talked about this last year, was the kind of the growth of the hybrid or athlete position on the field. I think a lot of the players we watched, especially on the defensive side of the ball last year, kind of fit into that mold. They were kind of between that linebacker, defensive back, linebacker, safety, could really play them all over the field. I'm wondering if that's going to continue. I think it will. When you think about the talent you have, and if you have a really talented player who really kind of crosses over into several different positions, I think there's a lot of those guys on a lot of these teams. So I think coaches have recognized that and are going to continue to use certain players that way.
Yeah, with the game, spreading out over the past 10 years to do the whole 53 1/3 wide field, they've got to have guys that can cover that. And that traditional middle linebacker that was, B gap to B gap player, there's still a spot for someone like that, but they better be able to run.
Yeah.
They better be able to get in their drops. They better be able to cover jet sweep. They better be able to find a way to
to cover some of these super athletic tight ends, that you're finding more now that kind of fit this same build.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that is here for a little while, that trend, Joe. So we'll see if some teams go back to big, and the more you see big lines that can pound it, you've got to then you're going to have to find a 240-pound linebacker.
Right, exactly. Take one of those guys from the defensive line and stand them up right in the middle.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You're smaller
from
defensive lineman.
to here. Yeah. Right.
All right. So last topic or question, Dan, and this is a big one because, last year, some of our most popular episodes, so to speak, were they're all around Zuko. Right, and Zuko's Dog of the Week.
He's right here at my feet.
Right at your feet,
He's got me. Actually, he's behind me. He's got me blocked into my desk.
Yeah, and we're planning on doing that again this year. I mean, we went out to several locations last year with Zuko and presented Zuko's Dog of the Week winner dog tags, which players loved, the coaches loved, and we're going to be doing it again this year. So.
Zuko loved. Me, loved, not so much.
Sure. You not so much, because you had to haul him out to who knows where. Yeah, but you said you're willing to do it again this year, right?
I'm doing it.
All right, good. Yeah, I'll meet you there.
Yeah, I'm prepping him. I started talking to him today. He's about to meet some new friends.
He's ready.
He's got to behave.
He's got to behave. All right, so if you were to say or predict who is going to be our first Zuko's Dog of the Week winner this year in week 1, give me your prediction.
Whoa. So, all right. So I've got a group to choose from that I'm going to keep my eyes on.
Yeah,
I know,
right.
But there's a lot of good players.
I know,
so a couple guys we talked to, Ian Campbell and Tommy Thies. They got me ready to play football. I was like ready to put on a helmet for a play talking to those two guys.
Right.
And they are going to be leaders on their defenses, both of which are going to be good. Ian Campbell is a guy that can wreck a game up front. He can ruin your passing game. So he's got to be one. And Tommy Thies, same way, just a guy that I've always said, not many players jump off the film like he does. I'm also following Jalen Torres of St. Francis.
Okay. Yeah.
D lineman. King Liggins.
Yeah.
Brother Rice.
Yep.
A couple of Mount Carmel guys. Maybe a guy under the radar a little bit. Mount Carmel middle linebacker, Stephen Winkler.
Okay.
Love how he plays, aggressive. He's kind of that true linebacker, but he can run.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a B gap to B gap guy, Mike linebacker, but he can get to the sidelines on jet sweep.
Yeah.
And Braden Jones from Mount Carmel as well. And those guys, sure. That team, that game's going to be on nationally, right?
It is. Yes.
Yeah. So we'll be able to see them again. A lot of people will be able to see them. So those are the guys I am keep my eye on. I don't know if I'm ready to make a pick.
All right. So if you're going to be somewhat wishy-washy like that, then I like all those guys you mentioned. They would be on my list as well. And I'll add one more, Dan.
Okay.
And that's Owen Lynch from Rita.
Yeah.
We love the way he played last year. Now he was a bit in the shadow of some other players here who were outstanding, right? But I think he's going to step up this year. And you know who convinced me of that too? Was when we interviewed Stephen Armbruster. I mean, when we asked him to talk about defense, first name he brought up was Owen Lynch. He said, "You got to watch this guy. He's going to be a beast this year." So I'm adding him to the mix as well as a possible first week winner of Zuko's Dog of the Week.
All right. He heard his name. Do you see him up now? He's checking to make sure the perimeter is clear.
Yes.
Yeah.
He likes that particular pane of the window.
Yes, he does. Yes. Yeah. There's it's funny. Owen Lynch is great because we heard his name 2 times. The coach
talked about him as well.
Right.
And saying, it sounded like he kind of dominated the summer practices.
Yeah.
So great call on that.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch him play, just as I am all the other ones we just mentioned as well. So, and I'm sure whoever gets the first Zuko's Dog of the Week winner is going to be well deserving, Dan.
Yes, for sure.
All right, so that's going to wrap up our Chicago Catholic League season preview. We've looked at the storylines, the pressure points, the sleepers, the teams ready to chase greatness. But as always, the beauty of high school football is that the season never unfolds exactly as we predict, and that's what makes it so special. We'll be here every step of the way, tracking the big games, spotlighting the players, and naming our Zuko's Dog of the Week winners. Thanks for tuning in to the Varsity Voices. Make sure you're subscribed and following us on wherever you get your podcast from and social media, and be sure to share this episode with your fellow Chicago Catholic League fans and let us know your thoughts, because the conversation is just getting started. Until next time, enjoy the kickoff to another unforgettable season, and we will talk to you soon.